Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Before we get started, I just want to give you a rundown of the schedule so no one is unsure of what's going on. So we're going to do a quick introduction and judge introduction of some guest judges and some FSA judges. And then we will have 5 speeches. We'll have final scoring time for the judges, and we hope to announce the winners at the end. So we, 2020 has been a really tough year, and connection has been lacking, and that's why we coordinated this event. So this is called MUSTANG TALK. It's our first ever one, and it is FSA's own spin on TED Talks. TED Talks have been revolutionary in the way that a single speaker connects with everyone that is listening, whether it be others in the room or someone watching later on YouTube. The words shared are not only meant to inform, but also to make you feel the message deep inside of you. Each presenter talks about a topic dear to their heart while incorporating facts based on research. In a time where we've lost connection with one another due to social distancing, we felt it more important than ever to give the students a way to connect. With a traditional TED Talk, you see one person engage a room full of people and create a connection. That personal connection is created through not just the message, but also the sentiment attached to that message. For that reason, we made this year's theme, 2020 Taught Me. 2020 was a year that changed us all, and the 5 students we will hear from today have worked on their speeches several times over since January. They have worked to include all the elements you would hope to hear from a TED Talk, while also keeping it very personal to their own experiences. Our hopes for you today are that you feel connected to our speakers, learn some new knowledge, and walk away feeling inspired. Thanks again for being here.
All right, so now we'll introduce our judges. We are so thankful that these individuals have volunteered to help us make this event happen and help us determine, most importantly, who our winner will be. To be fair, we think everyone that is going to step on the stage today is a winner for the amount of work that you guys have put into preparing these speeches, not just speeches, content, the connection. There's so many aspects of what you're going to see today that really make each of these kids a winner. So writing their speeches took a lot of time and effort, and presenting is what really takes the courage to be up here and be vulnerable. So if we said we were proud, that would be an understatement. And so just to keep things fair, the judges will use a rubric to objectively evaluate each student, just so we can figure out who's going to walk away with the prize money. All right, so starting up, our first judge is our guest judge joining us virtually, Rick Hancock. He is a CEO and one of the board members of the Alpharetta Chamber of Commerce, where FSA is also a member. And he was last year's commencement speaker, so he spoke at our graduation last year. So thank you for joining us, Rick, and volunteering your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me back to take part in some of the school activities. I'm a big fan of the TED Talk format, and as a former journalist, it allows me, I'm hearing some, there you go. It allows me as a former journalist to tell stories. TED Talk is about telling stories, so I'm very excited about hearing all the storytelling for the next couple hours. Thank you. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you, Rick. We have dragged you in for last year's commencement. This year is MUSTANG Talk, so we'll probably bring you back in the future.
Who knows what
Please. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next judge is joining us virtually as well, Rachel Dangerfield. She is the Leadership Programs Coordinator at the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce. She's over the Emerging Young Leaders Program with the GNFCC, and FSA has been participating consistently in this program for at least 3 years. So for all of you that have been getting my emails about applying to Emerging Leaders, now we're going to figure out who Rachel is. So Rachel, if you could please say some words.
Hi, thank you so much. Happy to be here. I was very excited when I was invited because I do get to work with so many FSA students. So it's great to get to meet some more and be a part of the TED Talks. I love TED Talks as well. I'm really excited to see what these students have for us today. And it's always a pleasure to work with FSA. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, and our last guest judge joining us virtually today is Kelly Utterback. She's Program Director at Insight Consulting Group. She's an FSA parent, and she was former MSO co-president. And she has great knowledge with dealing and connecting with teens, So thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I am super excited to hear what the kids have to say. I also love working with the FSA kids and have been thoroughly impressed with our school's ability to maintain the level of education that we've been able to in the past year with all of the challenges that we've faced. So I'm sure that the kids have a unique slant on it. I'm excited to hear what they have to say. Good luck.
Thank you, Kelly. And I can vouch for the fact that these kids will definitely have some good information for you. All right, so now bringing in some of our own, right? This is home court advantage now, but they're judges, so there's no advantage. So we have Miss Highfield, one of our math teachers, and Mr. Hayward, one of our social studies teachers. So we recruited / gently pressured them to joining. So here we have our FSA judges that we got from our teaching staff. Thank you, guys.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And then last but definitely not least, I don't know if some of you guys have heard of him, but Dr. Shenner, maybe? No? Yes? Okay. So Dr. Shenner is also one of our judges. So give a round of applause for Mr. Shenner or Dr. Shenner.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for organizing this for our students, high school team. Wonderful job. As I am watching this from my room, I am wondering why I am in my room and not in cafeteria with you guys. But you told me open the Zoom link, so I am here. And as I was thinking about it, I also know there are teachers watching it from their classrooms and there are parents watching it from their homes. So it is quite interesting experiencing this. I wish everyone good luck. I am thinking I will enjoy this very much. Thank you for organizing it.
Would you like to come up here?
Maybe at some point.
Okay, fair enough. No worries.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe at some point we'll have Dr. Shenner join us in this room. But other than that, we've already spoken to the judges about scoring, and we're pretty much ready for you guys to speak. So let's go. First one up.
Hello everyone, my name is Fatima. I'm very pleased to be here, and this is my Mustang Talk. Belonging is a powerful and deep-seated drive for all humans. We are social creatures, and we need to feel that we're part of a community. For many, this means fitting in with a specific crowd. And in order to do that, you might feel pressure to think or behave a certain way. But the problem with trying so hard to become what another person thinks is normal is that you can lose a part of yourself in the process. And I myself have experienced this. Take it from someone who's changed institutional environments 9 times in just 16 years of life. From kindergarten to first grade, at a gender-separated and very conservative Islamic school, I was Fatima. In second grade, my very first year in public school, I was Fatima. For the next 2 years, when I switched back and forth from my old Islamic school to a homeschooling co-op, I was Fatima. Then Fatima. Back to Fatima, Fatima, and Fatima again. Now, I was just as confused as you are. I accepted these changes in my name as if they were facts. The way others stated my name became who I was, and I almost felt as if I didn't have a say in the matter. And what I realized, anglicizing and pronouncing my name differently so many times, and with it, presenting myself and my character differently, is that the only way to be comfortable with change is by coming to terms with your individuality and value system, regardless of whatever new environment you may enter. It's about reaffirming the most important parts of your identity and recognizing a few things. 1, that normal is a subjective ideal and that everyone has their own norms. 2, fitting into a group and belonging to a group are 2 entirely different things. And 3, there's really absolutely no benefit in catering your personality to please those who may or may not ever accept you. I remember when I first made the transition to high school, and because I'd kind of been sheltered before going to ethnically diverse schools for my whole life, it was my first real experience in second grade being a minority and being visibly different from everyone. This especially having a totally atypical experience growing up in and out of different schools. This transition forced me to assess the norms of my new environment and decide how I was going to navigate those norms. I felt like I stood out like a sore thumb because I didn't know what type of shoes to wear or how to do my hair or how many questions I should or shouldn't be asking in class. I was just totally clueless. And when the dichotomy of cultures is really very distinct, you're sort of forced to think in that way. Let me paint this picture for you. I went from going through my daily routine at the mosque with my 10 peers to going through it at a predominantly Caucasian public school with over 2,000 kids. For some of these peers, all of which were girls, the mosque and their home was all they knew. Their only interaction with the outside world was with their immediate communities and their families. So by their standards, I was a wild child just because I had an Instagram account. I was the least sheltered, yet I still found my transition to public school a major adjustment. I remember asking myself if I should act the way that I had been for my whole life or act the way that everyone in my surroundings did. I was essentially forced to reassess what beliefs I actually valued and which ones I held simply because everyone else did. And this was really a struggle for me because I did want to be accepted. I quickly developed a large group of friends and acquaintances, many of whom I shared a lot of common interests with. For example, the first friend I made and I connected through our shared South Asian heritage. We discussed our love for wedding traditions, clothing, and fancy food, despite the fact that many other kids thought that our food was too pungent smelling for the cafeteria. I connected with others through shared interests of horror movies and art. I was becoming more and more comfortable sharing the completeness of who I am. And this was becoming more and more apparent as for the first time, I was making an effort to do things like insisting on pronouncing my name correctly. I even started wearing a necklace with my name in Urdu as a reminder of my identity and my core values. In fact, I have it on me. However, my name became an issue in a new way. Previously, it was how it sounded. Now it was how it looked written. And it was an issue for someone who was a distant acquaintance, a friend of a friend who was in my AP World class during the 2019-2020 school year. And during one of the most typical high school experiences, a fire drill, bringing unlikely compatriots together through the hallways, stairways, and parking lots, I had an encounter with her that stuck with me. She noticed my necklace, and when I caught her staring, I thought maybe I was about to receive a compliment. What I heard next shocked me. What does that say? Does it say kill the infidels? It took me a moment to process what she meant by that, but it was very clear to me that rather than being a genuine question, that comment was made to make me feel out of place. I, to her, was abnormal. But that's okay because by then I'd established what was important to me and I decided what was going to be normal to myself. What that whole encounter taught me is that maintaining a strong sense of identity is never a completed process. I thought that I'd moved on from the instability that I'd felt previously with my identity. But what I'd failed to recognize is that some people will always have a fixed perception of what is normal, which very few people, if any, will ever be able to actually meet. During this period of so-called instability, I worried a lot about not being perceived as normal. But what is normal? In the setting of the US, where there is so much race and identity awareness, normal is generally thought of as the majority demographic of white Christian Americans. But the reality is that each group has their own norms. And it is a mistake to think that you are not normal when you enter a group with new norms. And that's a mistake that I made. Because when I observed what the dominant culture was, I really internalized that because it was dominant, it was better. And that's just not necessarily the case at all. So why do we care so much? Or why do young people in particular care? If you're familiar with Erik Erikson or have taken AP psychology, you'll know that the fifth stage of his theory of psychosocial development is identity versus role confusion. During this time, adolescents search for a sense of self through an intense exploration of personal beliefs, values, and goals. But the mistake they tend to make is searching for this sense of self through the lens of the majority, seeking some sort of elusive general standard. But forever chasing an impossible standard of being like everyone else, yet maintaining your identity and wanting to be liked by everyone is not only draining, but simply unachievable. So the simple solution, you set your own standards. You don't have to confine yourself to what you think is expected of you. Having had my 9th transition thrown at me in 2020 and keeping my experiences, as well as the 3 things that I mentioned before in mind, that everyone has their own normal, belonging and establishing a strong sense of identity are not mutually exclusive. And being true to yourself have made the transition that all of us had to make in 2020, for me personally, the easiest by far, even though it was the most globally impactful. The types of transitions that I described experiencing as a child in my various schooling environments, private, public, homeschool, religious, were just a taste of the dramatic life changes that we all experienced during the pandemic in 2020 and to this day. But keeping these messages in mind are just as applicable for a teenage girl entering a new school, a young adult looking for a new job, or a mature individual negotiating family boundaries. I feel that we have all grown from the challenges of the pandemic, but what I'm grateful for in 2020 is my newly found sense of comfort in my skin and in my name. So, don't call me Fatima, it's Fatima. Thank you.
I don't even know if I have words after that one. Very powerful, especially talking about identity coming from a place of being a minority. It's a very heavy thing, you know, and to say it in the words that you gave us. Thank you.
I wish I would have been as wise as you when I was in high school.
Yeah,
Really,
I was definitely not
that's all I can
processing
say.
at that level.
Great job. So next up, we have Praneet.
We'll take like a 2 to 3 minute break, give the judges some time, and then we'll get Praneet up here. So Praneet, you can get set up.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. My name is Praneet Tadikonda, and I'm here to tell you why 2020 was the best year of my life. But just as easily as I can say that, I can tell you that it was also the worst year of my life with zero hesitation. But before we get there, let me first catch you up. Let me give you a little bit of a backstory. So I'll start with 8th grade. I would best describe myself as a new employee at 6th class. There was clear advantages to the job, of course, but there was also a clear learning curve that I'd have to accommodate to and overcome. I knew that there were clear problems with my work ethic and the way that I went about school in 8th grade before I even entered high school. From a school standpoint, I was averaging a high B and a low A. Not great grades, but it was also acceptable, not terrible. I also knew that I would start fresh in high school. I had no idea how I was going to transition, but I knew that I had to figure it out. And if worse comes to worse, I'd have to wing it. I knew that I have to at least start to make small changes in the way that I go about things so that they would add up by the time I enter high school. In 8th grade, I was a kid that would sit in class, starry-eyed at the classroom board while the teacher says X, Y, and Z. And sometimes I would try to grasp some information, but most of the time, I'd walk out of class 10 minutes later talking about Matt Ryan's football completion percentage in the last football game last Sunday, and I would gain literally zero information. And I personally knew that that was not going to work for me in high school. I mean, everybody hyped up high school to be some big building that I have to overcome, a big hill, and I just didn't even know what to expect. But I also knew that I'm the type of person to push my limits. If there was clear changes that I had to make in my work ethic, they wouldn't be done till something catastrophic happened. And eventually, something catastrophic did happen. I failed a social studies test. And this wasn't just a failing grade. When the teacher gave it back to me, I saw 47 on the front page in bright red marker. And that number truly put a trance on my body. I mean, I can't even describe it. I mean, time was frozen. I just didn't even know how to react. Sweating bullets, holding back a little bit of tears, trying to think, how on earth was I going to justify this to my parents when I get home? You know that feeling when you fail a test, it's in your back pocket, and you're walking home from the driveway, and you're like, how am I going to phrase this to my parents so that I don't die? It's not a great feeling. But I knew that I was going to have to overcome it. It's just another challenge. So I walked in, and I mean, I got my consequence. I got grounded. I don't remember everything. This event happened in 7th grade a few years ago. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is not because of the consequence. It's about I remember the buildup, because there's a certain level of achievement that I have to achieve, no matter what happens. And my parents aren't the ones that are going to be super strict about grades. They understand that in life, sometimes things happen. You know, life throws curveballs at you. But I also know that I can't walk in with a 47 on any assignment, let alone a whole test. So there's a bar that I set for myself, a bar of expectation. And with that bar, when it slips, that's when things go truly wrong in my life. Every time that I meet this bar or surpass it, life, for better or worse, is about average. And that bar slipped in freshman year. And once that happened, it was a ripple effect all throughout my life. And quarantine and Corona was the catalyst to that reaction. Everything after that was just a huge mess. But let me not jump ahead of myself. Let me first tell you what happened in freshman year. It started off like any other year, you know, normal. Everybody's compelled to do good in the first few weeks, month of the new school year, because it's the new school year, you know? You want to make a good impression on your teachers. You want to perform at least to some level. And that level is different for everybody. But for me, I reached what I thought was a good level, you know? Low A's, that's kind of my range. And I reached it. And then in November, things took a turn for the worse. And when I wrote this speech, I tried to describe what I was feeling in November and try to relate it to all of you, but I simply couldn't. There's sometimes in life, there's just a part where you just don't care for a little bit. It's not a sad feeling. You just feel like you could do better on your own. Just do your own thing. And in November, that's when I was at the peak of that feeling. And then that's when my grades started to slip a little bit. I had a few behavioral problems. You know, I was racking up some detentions. I was about to get a suspension, but then COVID hit. I didn't really get any more trouble after that. But the thing is, when my grades started to slip during the beginning of the second semester, that's when I realized I have to make some changes. And when COVID hit, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna be at my desk, gonna have a blanket over my legs, it's gonna be at home. And everybody was super happy that day on the last day of school before Corona or the quarantine started, because they knew we were gonna have at least a few days off, but nobody was really certain on how everything was gonna be, because COVID was very uncertain at that time. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna take this time, I'm gonna raise up my grade by a few decimal points at the least, because that was a level of expectation that I set for myself once again. And when this happened, it didn't happen. Like when quarantine started, for the first 5 days, I followed the regimen that I set for myself. I was working hard. I had my schoolwork next to me, glass of hot chocolate, because I'm not a big coffee guy, and I was doing my work. And then at the end of the 5th day, 6th of when quarantine really started to hit, it just started descending into Phil. By the end of the 2-week mark, I was sitting at my workplace with old cups half filled with soda. I had a ton of missing assignments by that point. And overall, I just wasn't feeling my best. I mean, I knew that there was a lot going on, but I also knew that I wasn't reaching the level of expectation that I set for myself. And I simply didn't do anything about it. I knew everything around me was so negative, but I just didn't begin to assess why my mindset was the way that it was and why I wasn't making the changes that I need to be making. And I had this free time that came with quarantine. In this free time, I thought it would help me make better decisions, make more impactful decisions, because I thought decisions was the key problem and where I ended up being at the beginning of second semester of freshman year. I thought decisions would help me get my grade up and will help with my behavior problems. But that wasn't it. Decisions was only a small part of it. The key part was that there was a little voice inside me that was like, the situation isn't that bad. It can wait a little bit. You don't need to make that change right now. And I kept listening to it, and I kept pushing it on and on and on. And I was just lost. I didn't know, I wasn't sad, but I just didn't know what questions I should be asking, where I should do about my mental health. And if anybody was to ask me what the worst time of my life was, I'd say April 2020, without any hesitation, without any doubt, because it truly was. I was losing track of the last time I showered. My acne was at an all-time high. I didn't know what day of the week it was half the time. And that all started to take a toll on me. My grades were slipping, and I just didn't know what I should do. I would go to sleep at 3 a.m. I'd try to get up at 7 a.m. for a Zoom class. I think we all know how that ended. I would be dead asleep on my computer. The Zoom class would just be white noise at that point. And that's when I finally decided I can't keep doing this. At this point, if I end up doing this through high school, what happens once quarantine is done? How am I going to adapt again? I can't deal with that. So that's when I drew the line. On May 18th, I stayed up for 36 hours straight, and I slept at 10 p.m. the next day. Why, you say? Because I wanted to completely reset my sleep schedule. Before that, it was completely out of whack, and I decided that's at least one thing that I can control. At least I need to take the first step before anything worse happens than already is. So I did. I took that first step. And my God, was it the best first step that I ever took? Because when I reset my sleep schedule, everything else slowly started to fall into line. I mean, once I did that, slowly my grades started to get up because I was attending more Zoom classes. Everything was like an unrippling effect from when quarantine first started. And by the middle of June, I was waking up at 9 a.m., doing the whole morning routine, brushing, showering, getting ready. And then a habit that I started at the beginning of June was actually eating breakfast. Because most of the time, I would just skip breakfast. I just thought, oh, it's an unnecessary meal. It's not going to hurt me. But I thought, hey, if I'm going to do this whole change thing correctly, I'm going to do it right, without a doubt. So I started doing that. And I would go down, make myself a bowl of oatmeal, probably sit in front of the TV for a few hours, scroll through Instagram. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Of course, in an ideal world, those few hours of TV, they wouldn't be in my schedule. But we don't live in an ideal world. There's a century-old saying that change takes time. And my God, is it true? I mean, when you change, you can't rush it. Because if you rush it, your progress is going to get stunted at some point. So I was making my steady progression of change, and I was marking it down all in my agenda. And by October, I was seeing decent progress. I mean, I was getting my grades up again. I finished one of my summer programs that I planned for. It was GABS. And then everything was looking like it was going good. If I were to retake the test of where my current life situation was at that point, I would say that October was probably the best. I bumped it up from a few points from June. And that's why structure is so important. Because when you have structure, you have something that you can rely on. That's why you can't rely on school for your structure or your parents. It has to come from you. Because just like this has shown us, school can fall apart at any time. I mean, of course, school was still there on Zoom. But I relied on the schedule of 7 to 3. I'll come home, I'll do my work. But that all went away after quarantine started. And that's why I think structure is the key when you make and form new habits and new characteristics between yourself. The second main thing I want you to take away from what I've said here today is that taking the first step is vital. Because let's look back at early March, early quarantine. I didn't do the changes that I expected of sitting at my desk, and I didn't increase those grades in freshman year. It never happened. because I never took that first step. I thought, hey, I can let the situation go for a little bit longer. Who's it gonna hurt? And there's always that little bit inside of you that's like, oh, you can wait a little bit longer. Everybody has it. It's like, oh, you can wait 10 more minutes before you get up to get to go to work. You can wait till summer to fix your work ethic, but you can't wait. That's the thing. You need to take that first step. That's how you build a new habit. Take it from me, someone who's an expert procrastinator, but also someone that took that first step. It was the best decision I ever made. Because when you take that first step, it's when you truly realize what your core values are and how you're going to build upon it. Now, a year later, I'm the best I've ever been. But the thing is, the real kicker, the roller coaster's not done yet. Who knows where I'll be at in May 2023 or on my deathbed? Who knows what I'll achieve? But that's the thing. The hills that almost threw me off the roller coaster in quarantine, there could be hills twice the size now. But I know I'll be able to handle them because I'm now confident in myself that I can handle anything that's thrown at me. And I think that's the real beauty of self-change. Thank you.
All right, so we have 3 down, 2 to go. And so far, each person has brought something so different to the table. We've talked about loss and expression. We've talked about identity. And I think what Praneet gave us a little bit was a lot of what most people around the world were feeling when quarantine onset. And, you know, when we were working with the kids, a lot of what we had to do, we were like, don't just tell us what happened. Give us that personal connection. And so I think as adults, it's a little easier to do, but for teenagers, making that personal connection and connecting it to your truth, that is the real work. So that was very well done.
And I actually taught Praneet in both 8th and 9th grade. And while I'm not teaching him this year, working with him through the speech and then seeing him present today, I can attest to amazing growth and transformation. I'm proud of you.
And I've already told you, you've definitely done a 180 since we've last spoke. Yeah. All right. And so without wasting more time, we can go ahead and jump into our next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Akshay Maharaj. Now, the speeches before me, they were incredible. I've already learned so much listening to them. So I don't know if I can hold up to the candle, but I'm going to try my best. As Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers once said, trust the process. So I hope you can stick with me and trust my process. Solitary confinement. Some of you guys might know what it is. Some of you guys might not know what it is. It's a common practice in prisons and jails across the United States and in some other countries worldwide. It involves physical isolation, meaning that a person has minimal interaction with other people. People in solitary confinement have limited or no opportunity to interact with others. They eat, sleep, and use the toilet in the same place. A majority of solitary confinement cells in prisons don't have windows. The length of time a person spends in solitary confinement varies greatly. Some can spend hours, days, weeks, months, and in extreme cases, some can even spend decades. Moreover, research shows that solitary confinement causes adverse psychological effects and increases the risk of serious harm to individuals who experience it. According to an article in the Journal of American Academy of Psychiatry and Law, isolation can be as distressing as physical torture. Think about that. Physical torture. That's some serious stuff, man. I'm just saying. The Bureau of Justice Statistic reports that approximately 25% of people in prison and 35% of those in jail that have spent 30 days or longer in solitary confinement during the previous year had symptoms of serious psychological distress. The rates were similar for those who only spent 1 day in isolation. You might be wondering where I'm going with this. Why am I talking about jails and prison cells? Well, for the past year, in 2020, America as a nation itself has been experiencing their own form of solitary confinement in the form of quarantine. As the United States continues to struggle with containing COVID-19, concerns are growing regarding the impact on mental health quarantining will have. Local reports cite increases in domestic violence calls and opioid overdoses. Crisis hotline use is also rising, with some reports of staggering spikes. While national data is sparse, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Household Pulse Survey suggests that the proportion of US adults with symptoms of anxiety disorder and depressive disorder has quadrupled, with the burden disproportionately borne by women and people of color. Another populace affected severely by this issue are those over the age of 65, especially those living alone. For example, my grandfather lives alone in the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago. As a country dealing with COVID, Trinidad went into complete lockdown and closure of its borders. Up till now, there's been a nationally controlled lockdown of all shipping ports and airports, and I'm extremely worried about how he's doing. My grandfather was married for 45 years, and then his wife died about 13 years ago. He had to adjust almost overnight to living alone. He only has 3 grandchildren, and he's my only living grandparent left. And I worry about it. I love my grandfather. We have a special bond. He tells me stories about how he worked for the oil union in Trinidad and how he got to travel to Russia and meet some Russian executives and political members. I was like, wow, this is a cool guy. But he has some health issues. He has a need for cataract surgery in the future. He has a pacemaker he needs to use for his heart. So it's worrying. I wonder, am I going to be able to see him the next time I go to Trinidad? Now, before COVID, just like my grandfather, and I'm sure a bunch of your family members, they could go and meet people face to face. They could move around freely and interact with people. Quarantine has put a damper on that, especially for the elderly. COVID limited face-to-face interaction. Now, for the first few months, we thought this was nothing. We thought, oh, it'll be over in a few weeks. Oh, it'll be over in a few months. Well, it wasn't. Now, think about these people, the elderly, who have been for their whole lives able to travel around freely, and some who live for their grandkids and children. How would they feel not being able to see them for even a week, a month, and in some cases now, it's been a year? For someone age 65 and over, solitary confinement or quarantine is extremely detrimental and can wind up causing an even more severe mental health state than ever. It is likely that the mental health fallout from this pandemic will continue to grow. When my grandfather passed 13 years ago, he went into a sort of passive depressive disorder. Now, he had gotten over this about a few years ago, but I'm sure it's coming back. When I spoke to my grandfather a few days ago, I asked him how he was doing. He gave me his usual, well, it's all right. Everything's okay. What else can I say? And I'm sure that's the exact feeling all of us are thinking right now. If somebody asks you, are you okay? All you can really say is, well, I'm all right. I'm okay. I guess I'm doing what I gotta do. So the exacerbation of social detriments for health will last for years and likely decades. This will have long-term implications for mental health. The 1918 flu pandemic led to reduced educational attainment, higher rates of physical disability, and lower income for individuals who are out of work due to the pandemic, suggesting there may even be intergenerational effects. Due to COVID, innumerable people have been placed out of work, and an explosion of not only anxiety and depression, but also agoraphobia, PTSD, and OCD has skyrocketed. The elderly experienced disproportionately greater adverse effects from the pandemic, including more severe complications, higher mortality, concerns about disruptions to their daily routines and access to care, and difficulty in adapting to technologies like telemedicine, and concerns that isolation would worsen their mental health conditions. Have you ever talked to your grandfather or your grandmother and noticed they cannot point the FaceTime camera right at their face? Some of them just aren't very good when it comes to technology. Now imagine having to do their doctor checkups, their mental health checkups on the screen. If they can't even point the camera at themselves, how are we going to be able to evaluate their healthy state? These types of situations are happening all over the world and will probably open up new forms of mental health concerns on already existing ones, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, especially among the frontline and elderly. For finding peace of mind, I found that methods like meditation and yoga work perfectly well. This is what I believe about the meditative process, so you guys can take it with a grain of salt. Meditation is basically a training for your mind. When certain things happen to you, your mind generates a certain response, whether it's happiness, frustration, anger, sadness, or anything of the sort. The way your mind has been taught is to take the path of least resistance, a path of resignation. This is what it will take forever, unless you train it not to take that path. Meditation teaches you how and makes it easier to override this process of taking the path of least resistance. Who's doing the overriding of this process? Is it you? Is it the people that wrote the meditation books? Is it Buddha who's said to be the originator of meditation? That's the million-dollar question. So if you think meditation is easy, I'm sorry to say, but you are incorrect. Meditation is life-changing, but it's one of the hardest things you can ever try to do. I'm not trying to discourage you. I just want you to know what you're going to get into. You might be getting yourself really relaxed. But is that possible? That's all you're doing? Over time, you learn to better control your mind in everything. In times of anger, you can control what you feel. In times of boredom, you control what you do. In times of anxiety, you can control how you act, and so on. All of this comes as a result of training the mind to turn away from the thoughts and actually go back to breathing. All of us overlook breathing, but what keeps us alive in the end? It's breathing. That's why breathing is so important. Now, I'm sure some of you think breathing just lets me pump oxygen and carbon dioxide in and out of my lungs. But it's much more than that. Breathing can help you refocus yourself. And the best part of all this is it's not a placebo. It's supported by scientific evidence. Many scientific studies show that meditation actually increases gray matter in the brain. This is the part of the brain that contains neurons, which directly helps and affects many things, such as increasing focus, controlling stress and anxiety, and increasing concentration. After doing this, hour after hour, you gain a skill. Once you realize that you don't have to be sitting on a cushion to use this skill, you get happy. It's sort of similar if you do 15 push-ups a day. Let's say you do 15 push-ups a day for a month. You're gonna get up one day and realize, wow, I can flex my biceps. You don't really know how you learned to flex your biceps. Nobody really taught you to do it, but you can kind of just do it. You couldn't flex them before, and you're like, wow, now I can do that. That's pretty cool. Now, you guys might be looking at me thinking, Akshay, why are you up here talking about meditation? I'm sure you've never meditated a day in your life. Look at you, you can't even stand still. You're pacing up and down the stage. Well, I'm not trying to brag or anything or toot my own horn, but I actually practice martial arts. And in martial arts, they tell us that you can't just go around punching random people. I can't just get angry, look at my dad and say, Dad, I want to punch you. You made me mad. No, that's not how the world works, guys. Trust me, I've tried. It doesn't work out very well. So meditation, yoga, all these forms, they may not be the best for you. I'm not saying you have to go and sit down and meditate for 6 hours. Don't do that. It really won't help. But if you're looking to find something to help your mental health, you need to find something. Mental health is important. That's what 2020's taught me. Before 2020, I used to look at mental health and be like, well, mental health, Miss August just preaching random stuff. I don't really need to listen to her because I don't have a pre-diagnosed mental health condition. But with 2020, I've seen my friends and family suffering. I've seen people on the street walking down after quarantine saying, they all look sad. Why does everybody look so sad? I'm one of the on-campus students at FSA, and there's not much people on campus besides the teachers and a few students. And when I first walked in the campus, because I think I was here on the first day the campus reopened, I was like, wow, everybody looks really sad, especially the teachers. Now, coming as somebody who does not have a pre-diagnosed mental health condition, it's like you look at the outside world and you think, well, that doesn't bother me, so I don't need to look at it. Well, guys, mental health is important. I'll give you a little example. I was gonna wear a blazer up on the stage because I thought I would look more professional. But a bunch of questions ran through my mind. What if I get too hot? What if the blazer hooks on this cool sign and I trip and faceplant? That would not make me look very professional or cool. So those little things can stem into something greater. they can exacerbate themselves into a greater mental health condition. If you do that, if you think that way, day after day, it will grow. It's just like a plant. You put some seeds down, you give it the nourishment it needs, obviously it'll grow, unless you stomp it down. But we don't like to stomp down plants. We like nature. So, 2020 taught me mental health's importance. As you guys have heard from all the speeches before me, I'm sure you can tell. Thank you.
All right, so for the record, you guys heard it here. I do preach mental health. The children choose to not listen to me. You know, everyone's sharing experiences of how 2020 impacted them on so many different levels, and we're getting to see a little bit of insight from everyone, how they've all been changed, whether we wanted it or not. I think 2020 changed all of us. And so hearing from each of these students, it's just so powerful to understand what changes they made.
And Akshay did some nice ad lib at the beginning. We really appreciated that, adding to it after he heard the other speeches and getting in that personal connection. So they've all been great, and we only have one more.
So we'll give about 2 minutes for the judges to get caught up on their scoring, and then we'll have our last but not least.
Hello, everyone. My name is Khalil Lindo, and my speech is going to be a little more of an eye-opener. I want to speak to you about a concept that has been incorporated and introduced into our society's lexicon called alternative facts. Now, you're probably wondering what this even means, as this is a very confusing and troubling word. See, alternative facts is this notion that facts can be alternative. You probably might be a little familiar with the term since it's been introduced in 2017 and has been getting a lot of attention and media and press in 2020. Now, let's try and break down this complex, weird definition of this word, alternative facts. The definition is that alternative facts is a different version of a fact. I'm going to pause to let everyone take that in. A different version of a fact. The very construction of the word is troubling. The syntax is wrong. There is an alternative to things that have already been proven to be true. The phrase's entire meaning is saying that a fact can be true and untrue at the same time. Let me just give you an example. Let's say I drop a pencil. Now, if I were to drop a pencil in Europe, Asia, North or South America, or Africa, the pencil will drop to the floor due to gravity. An alternative fact would be saying, if I drop a pencil in Europe, it will rise to the sky. If I drop a pencil in Africa, it will move to the right. If I drop a pencil in Asia, it will move to the left. But only in North or South America will the pencil fall to the ground. Doesn't that seem weird to you? Now, unless the laws of gravity change per continent, I don't think that is true. And that is an alternative fact to gravity. The forces that attract the body towards the center of the earth is the global definition of gravity. So the pencil will drop towards the floor regardless of where I am. In order for something to be considered a fact, it needs to be something tangible and supported by evidence, data, and analysis. To prove anything, you must have evidence. The definition of evidence just circles right right back down to facts. Now, why is this important? Why have I brought you all here talking about the weirdest term you heard since 2019? Well, it's actually very dangerous if we disregard the concept of evidence. If we go down this road, society can spiral out of control. Let me give you a bit of historical context to the matter. The entire point of democracy is public trust. The government trusting the people and the people trusting the government. When you let alternative facts creep in and interfere with that trust, you can end up destroying the very principles that keep that government together. Take a look at the Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire fell because of many different reasons. Too many military losses, they expanded their land too big, or they just relied too much on slave labor. However, what destroyed Rome from the inside out was government and political corruption. People didn't trust the government because of this corruption, and this led to many civil wars. Civil wars so violent that if you were in any position of power, if you were crowned anything, if your name had a title, or if you were recognized, you're most likely going to get assassinated. So that's very bad. So the main reason why I brought this point across is because people lost trust in the government, and that led to the fall of the Roman Empire. And this could very happen to our democracy today. The CDC, for example, is made up of experts designed to tackle diseases like COVID-19. They have completed their research, they have done experiments, and have gathered evidence to support their conclusions on how to deal with COVID-19. However, I could still go onto YouTube or Twitter and just find streams of people completely disregarding what the experts say, with no evidence, no facts, and no data to back it up. And this evidence from the CDC can save their lives, but people still disregard it. There is a difference between opinions and informed subject matter experts. Everyone is challenged to be informed about any human activity, but historically, we have trust certain professionals and individuals with certain particular issues, especially life-threatening issues like a pandemic. For example, who do you call if there's a fire? If your first thought was anything but the fire department, then I'm gonna have to talk to you later. Anyway, once the firefighter comes to fight the fire, they know what they're doing because they have been trained to know what they're doing. However, it seems in 2020 that people are more likely to try and fight the fire themselves than trust the experts that know how to do so. To the point where they don't even know that pouring water on a grease fire will actually make the fire bigger. And this can make people lose their lives. I used to watch the news, and every time I saw an interview with a family member who lost someone to COVID, they would often say that they didn't believe in the CDC. They messed up one day and disregarded the guidelines. They believed COVID wasn't serious, or they didn't believe that COVID would kill them. They didn't believe the facts and evidence the CDC had provided, and it led to their deaths. It was heartbreaking to see someone lose someone they love because that person decided to be entitled to their own facts and completely disregard that evidence. And when people let alternative facts completely disregard public trust, this can result in people debating about everything and never compromising. People will debate about whether the sky is blue, whether we actually breathe air, whether seatbelts can actually protect you from a car accident. All of these can be questioned and argued and debated if we let alternative facts become our essence, become our foundation, become our consciousness, and become a part of our lexicon. As a student of science and history, I'm asking you to take away from this is to trust the experts who have completed the research. Let their data enter our public lexicon. If you disagree with the experts in any way, then make sure you yourself can follow scientific methodologies and do the research to form your own conclusions. You can do this to win an argument, or you can do this to save lives. 2020 has taught me that people don't necessarily listen, and that there has been a decrease in public trust because of the things that people are going through. And what I want to say is, do not let hardships completely disregard evidence and resort to alternative facts. Thank you.
Right. So that was it.
That was it.
That was it. So we had all 5 speeches. Just to kind of give you guys a little background as to what this process has looked like. These, I'm gonna call them the speakers, right? The speakers, they started with an idea, right? Something that they wanted to bring forth and present. We invited them to bring the idea. And then after, we gave them some feedback on how to change how they're delivering their idea. We didn't change the content. And then we tried to pull personal connections out of them. For some people, it was harder than others, right? And so trying to get them to give a message in a way that it can be received and also a way that they can connect with the room. Trying to make them reflect on what do you get out of a TED Talk, reflect back to what happens in a TED Talk. So multiple meetings, always leaving the changes up to the students or our speakers. But over and over again, they brought back their speeches every time with updates. And the final products, we did not even imagine they would be this good.
Yeah, they have all added since our very last meeting up to like 1 or 2 weeks ago. And they really refined them, polished them. They're amazing now. I'm definitely going to have to watch these recordings again and take it all in a second time. But most of these students are virtual some days, and they were on top of their emails and meeting with us on Zoom. We had, I don't know how many meetings with each student, upwards of 8.
Yeah, at least 5 with each of you guys.
And they were always there, always on time, always working to improve their speech. So this wasn't just a one and done. They put a lot of effort into these speeches, and I think it really came through today.
And with some of them, we were like, all right, we're hearing too much of you, bring in some of the facts. Some people were like, it sounds too many facts, bring in some of you. And bringing a balance in a way that they can connect with the room. Because if you guys have seen TED Talks, you know, you see the speaker kind of walking, connecting with every person in the room. If you guys were on this stage, you would see a very empty room. Because it's still a pandemic, we're trying to, we're trying to be conscious of certain protocol. And so they are standing here trying to connect with a bunch of you by staring at an empty room. And if you have taught during a pandemic, you know that's a hard thing to do. So I hope this gives you guys a little more respect for your teachers, right? All right. And so with that, we're just waiting for our judges to finish deliberating. If you can't tell, we're standing up here stalling, trying to waste some time, giving the judges a little bit of time. And then that way we can have our winner in about 10 minutes or so.
Yes, if you guys can make sure all the scores are summed, it should be auto summed for you on your Google Sheet for each tab. And then I'm just gonna go in and take averages, and that's how we'll determine the winner. So maybe once you're done scoring, you could just send a message in the chat. My score sheet is finalized, something like that would be awesome.
So judges, we're waiting for your message in the chat, letting us know that the scores are finalized from your end. So once we have that from you, we'll announce a winner. So in the meantime, I will stop the recording, mute it, and we'll hang out for a few minutes. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes, all the viewers, thank you, thank you. We'll thank the judges again profusely at the end, but thank you for judging. Thank you to everyone who came in person, everyone who's tuning in virtually. We do hope to make this an annual event, one day with a packed room, just like we used to have pre-pandemic, and that's our goal. We have these letters, so why not use them?
Yeah. So this was our first official Mustang Talk. So stay tuned for next year's. All right, round of applause for all of our speakers. So we just want to talk about some of our speakers really quick because they
All of them.
put heart and soul into all of it. So just talking about them in order that they spoke, starting with Saba. Saba, when you signed up, I was like, this girl is so soft-spoken. How is she going to give a speech? But your courage said so much to me today. I am so proud of you. You are the youngest of both of you are freshmen. So we had two freshmen, but being so young and not having all of this background speaking, I'm so proud of how you came forth. You're able to project your voice. I almost felt ashamed of myself when I was like, be louder. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable, but you did so good. You really did.
Yeah, Saba, we had a lot of schedule conflicts, so I only met with you live a few times, and then I watched your Zoom recordings, and I was blown away to see the full thing. And the last time I looked at your slideshow, you didn't have the GIFs, and it was amazing. That was just like an awesome extra added element. So it was great, and I'm proud of you too.
Love the visuals. It really helped your point, and it made it more cohesive. Thank you. Next, Fatma. I know we brainstormed with you a lot before you even had like a targeted idea of how you're going to really hone in on this. And as you had a lot of ideas bouncing all over the place. So I know sometimes we'd be like, all right, reel that back in. All right, let's expand here. But it was like a fun creative process because you had a lot of ideas, almost to the point where you're like, how am I supposed to center in on something? So the creative process was really fun.
Yeah, Fatima did amazing. And actually, she's also the chief editor of the yearbook, which was due yesterday. So to see her produce an amazing yearbook and then produce this amazing speech, I'm blown away. Great job.
All right.
Then we had Praneet. So I already said a little bit about Praneet because I taught him 8th grade, 9th grade. So pandemic times, the beginning of the pandemic. And like I said, you've grown a lot, and your speech, you added a lot since I last heard it, lots of personal connections, and it was really great, and I'm proud of everything you've done.
So Praneet, I remember, all right, my first year here was, Praneet, pay attention. Praneet, sit down. Praneet, stop, right? And then, having a meeting with him this year, he was focused. He's like, what do I need to do? Can you connect me with someone for this? I'm looking for opportunities. Here's my goals. Here's my dreams. I'm trying to execute. And I was like, what happened during this pandemic? Who did this turn you into? But so proud of you. Loved hearing your story. I felt like that resonated with a lot of students, right? A lot of us dealt with that, right? Kind of living in our grind for a little bit before we were like, wait, I'm stuck at home. I need to figure out how to make myself productive at home.
And then next we had Akshay. And with Akshay, we had to really pull that personal connection out of him. But towards the end there, we got it. And he did some ad-lib, added his personal touches at the beginning, the middle, the end, and made it really personable and relatable. And you've got that personal connection in, and it's come a long way since the beginning. And I know you have a lot on your plate too, lots of extracurriculars, and took the ACT this morning. So awesome job.
Yeah, took the ACT. I know even your mom was blown away that you were fully functional right now. So, we're proud of you. Glad to hear you hear my mental health ramblings. Hopefully someone's hearing them. Hopefully someone's doing something about them. Akshay's so good at speaking that he turns everything almost kind of into an essay, and we're like, Akshay, stop. Bring in the personal connection. He's like, what do you mean? So, we really had to bring the personal connection in because next year when you're doing your college apps, you'll be doing just that. So, well done. Expected nothing less of any of you.
Wait, he took the ACT, this?
Yeah, he
You
took the
should have said
ACT.
that before this. Let me go back to school.
And then, last but not least, we had Khalil, and he blew us away again. Come a long way since the beginning. Added his own personal connection to the story, and really made it so we could see, why does alternative facts matter to him? That was something we had to, get more from him at the beginning. And again, it's come a long way through all of our meetings and turned out awesome today. And we're really proud of you. It was great.
Yeah, and for those of you that weren't directly in this room, Khalil walked in during the fourth speech, right? So to come in, look as composed as he did, because if I was in his place, I would have been up here sweating, shaking, jittery, but he came in looking as composed as he always does. And, when he first said he wanted to talk about alternative facts, we're like, whoa, that can be really loaded. But he took a concept that can be very politically polarized and made it very personal and talked about the value of facts. And so that was very well done because talking around that topic is not an easy thing. So each of these speakers, we've seen you come so far. You've done so good, and it was all for this moment. Are we ready? Are we ready to figure out who won?
Go.
Y'all making sure your wallets are full?
So we have top 3. That was how we originally advertised this event. And of course, there's not a huge number of students this year because of all the weirdness. So it's really hard for us we have to listen to what the judges said and only pick 3, but we wish everyone could get a place. But like we said at the very beginning, you're all winners. The courage, vulnerability, hard work that it took to get up here and do this, amazing. Who cares about the place in the end? But if there wasn't places and prize money, no one would do it, so. Okay, 3rd place is Khalil Lindo.
Stay there because we have no cash to hand out. Sorry, you will get your money. Okay. All right, so we need a drum roll for our 2nd place. 2nd place is Mr. Akshay Maharaj.
Okay, now we need the biggest drum roll of all.
All right.
Okay, first place of the first annual Mustang Talks theme 2020 taught me on this day, April 21st, 2021 is Fatima Safdar. Woo!
So thank you to all of you that are sitting here, that are online, everyone that had to jump through hoops for us with all of these technical issues. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, judges.
Thanks so much. They were all fantastic.
Thank you, guys. We appreciated all your help.